to je spet, to je za mene razkroj skupnosti na nek način, ne? In veste, kaj pa najbolj zanimivo na tem? Da se nekaj tako norega dogaja v Ameriki, ki je prava tragedija. Če pogledate to skrajno desnico, njihova oblika organizacije, pol ilegalno, sovražnik je država, državni aparat, to so rdeči panterji, črni panterji v desni preobleki. Se pravi, ta levi, na pol legalen militarizem, ki je bil značilno levice pred 30-40 leti, zdaj ustaja na desni. In to se meni zdi prava tragedija Amerike. Kako tisti levi populizem, ki je bil močen nekje do Carterja, bi rekel, tam še nekje je bil Nixon, je zdaj desni. Ne, jaz mislim, jaz sem dejansko tukaj pesimist, kako to rekel. Ne? Jaz mislim, da so pravila igre geopolitične tako nejasna, se res ne ve, kaj se lahko zgodi. Jaz mislim, da je situacija ne vem, če bo ravno to. Upajmo, da ni noben tako neumen, da bi hotel prav, da vse. Ampak absolut pa ne izključujem neke omejene vojne. In če boste rekli, da pretiravam, vam bom rekel, če niste premladi, ste najbrž vi. Spomnite se pred 25 leti. Zato Zahod, ki so bili neumni hudiči, Zahod dejansko ni verjel, pa tudi marsikateri pri nas, da je lahko v bivši Jugoslaviji, da je lahko vojna. In sem imel sarajevske prijatelje, ko se je začeli, so rekli, pošljimo otroke na Jadransko morje, pa to bo trajalo en teden, to ni nič. In, a veste, če bi rekli par let prej, da bo vojna v Jugoslaviji, kdo bi si to sploh lahko predstavljal, pa vojna v Evropi, pa to, ja, hudič, lahko je, ne? Najbolj se mi pa zdi smešno to, kako naši desni odkrivajo zdaj spet Orbana kot prijatelja. Nekaj časa vmes pa ni bil prijatelj, ker Orban predalje bolj ga občuduje. Ne, absolutno je nasprotnik, ampak on je odkrit rekel. Za nas Madžare ni Zahod in ima prijateljske stike z Rusi in s Putinom in tako naprej. Orban je odkrito, takrat so se ga raj malo izogibali, zdaj so ga spet, ne? Orban je to odkrit rekel, on je dal nek genijalen intervju pred kakimi 2 leti, kjer je rekel, demokracija, to je mogoče za Švedsko, pa te ne, za divje polazijatske države, kot smo mi, pa to ni in tako naprej, ne? Jaz sem tukaj pesimist, jaz mislim, da je to prihodnost, da se kapitalizem nasploh razvija v to smer, no? Mislim, ne?
Azijske vrednote.
Ja, ampak, da bom fair, to nima nobene veze z Azijo. Po mojem je prihodnosti Modi, ta indijski prime minister, ne? Ker on je ekstremen liberal v ekonomiji, naprimer, on je odkrit rekel, na Kitajskem postaja delovna sila malo predraga in naša šansa Indijcev je, da še cenej ponudimo, pa bi skrajni tak, hkrati je pa močno hindujski nacionalist. To je prihodnost, ne? In zdaj te države najbolj žalostno je, da tudi do neke mire delujejo. Dobro, tisti ne moraš univerzalizirati, samo jaz še vedno mislim, to mi je moj prijatelj Peter Sloterdijk rekel, ki je desničar in pa neumen. Je rekel, da za njega je heroj današnjega časa, tak je zdaj umrl, se mi zdi, Lee Kuan Yew, founder Singapurja, ne? Ker on je nek pogrunt in vse se je začelo z njim. Deng Xiaoping je tam vzor. Vedno, ker veš v Singapur, ti povsod kažejo to video, ko pride Deng Xiaoping pa reče, to mora biti model za Kitajsko celo, ne? On je pogruntil ta avtoritarni kapitalizem. In dejansko, to se mi zdi pri nas tudi nespretno, a pri nas ne vidijo, ko govorijo o trgu ti liberali. Ma poglejte te države, Koreja pa te. Pa to ni ta stari liberal kapitalizem, to je ekstremno močna država. V Koreji je pa te uspešne azijske države, Singapur, pa kaj vem, to je sjajna kombinacija privat kapitala, ampak zelo, to je tako kot Švica, zato je pa gre. Recimo, sem prav bral eno analizo, švicarska industrija je bila ure precej, ne? Ampak po se je vse zasralo, ko so Japonci pogruntali te digitalne ure. In so Švicari to rešili, ma kak trg. Zbrali so se elita na tihem, vsi kapital, država, so naredili točen plan in so rešili svojo industrijo. Ne? Dejansko bo treba pogruntati da spet se mi bojo režali, če mi rekel levi fašizem, ne? Ampak neke vrste družbene, recimo na Norveškem so mi prijatelji rekli, veste, kak trenutk je Norveška ekonomski. Norveška pa zdaj tudi, če olje odštejete, 50% večji bruto produkt na glavo od Švedske. Ne? Sem sjajna avantura imel na Norveškem. Sem sedel v kavarni s prijatelji, pa je prišla ena luštna natakarca blond. Pa sem rekel, kaj pa je ta? Pa so mi rekli, levi prijatelji, pust, to je Švedinja. Skratka, za Norvežane so Švedi že tista nižja uvožena delovna sila. Ampak to hočem reči. Oni so pogruntali, da so neke težave z welfare state. In so naredili to, kar Skandinavci znajo. Predstavniki sindikatov, kapitala, bank, država, so se zmenili in naredili nek nov družbeni pakt. To žrtvujemo, to ne. Ampak to je bilo social organizirano in je vzorno delovalo. Ne? Tega očitno mi nismo zmožni tukaj. Ne? In tukaj sem jaz kritičen do Drnovška. Ne samo do desni. Mislim, da je Drnovšek s tem začel. S vsem. On ni znal razmišljati v tem smislu, te aktivno angažirane gospodarske države. Pa to. On je igral neko drugo, veliko preveč inertno igro. Ne? In dejansko mislim, da se je tam začel. Nam je predobro šlo na začetku Sloveniji, ker smo bili pač najbolj razviti in pa smo zamudili, ne? Vse skak, ne? Pustimo, no, gremo no, naredite, ker ste hočeli. A gremo? Kje je? Gremo no. Nekam govoru. Še pogledaj. Gospod Žižek. Ja. Ja. Počakaj malo. Zdaj še je v redu, pusti. Vse v redu. Morate reči, no freedom for the enemies of freedom.
Ok, jaz vas prosim še za 5 minut, da vi šklocate, bomo pa vi začeli, če ste zato.
5 minut? 5 minut?
5 minutes for the media and then we start.
Sorry?
5 minutes for shooting.
Did I tell you what I found a wonderful report on internet? In Chinese hospitals, they put bilingual signs, but the English translation was done by some idiot who just looked without knowing and for example, you know how is the gynecological department called? Department for Kant examination, you know? It's ingenious, you have like dozens examples, you know? Okay. Lahko ti to, boš to rabil. Udi, do you have something to write with?
Čekaj, mogoče mi.
Samo če bo kaj prišlo, prosim, ja? Hvala lepa, ne bom ukradil to.
Dobar večer, lepo pozdravljeni na pogovoru. Pozdravljen Slavoj Žižek, pozdravljen Mladen Dolar in pozdravljen Udo Aloni. V preteklih 3 dneh smo videli 4 Udijeve filme, pravzaprav 3 Udijeve filme. Tako da tisti, ki ste si uspeli pogledati, je šlo za malo trilogijo izraelskega režiserja Udo Alonija. Sicer pa so Slavoj, Mladen in Udi dobri prijatelji in jaz vam prepuščam govornico. Hvala.
Now how should we do this? Is English all right? We don't need translations and stuff, we don't bother. Okay. So the title of this talk was proposed by Udi, and the title is Radical Grace. And I would start by asking, with the first round of questions or comments, I will try, I arrogate myself the role of the moderator. I'm sitting between 2 very talkative men. So I hope I will be able to impose some kind of order. So I would start by asking, what do we mean by radical grace? And here is the book by Udi, What Does a Jew Want?
Money.
A book, it's a simple answer. A book I really highly recommend for everyone to read. It's one of the best collection of Udi's papers, reflections on the Palestinian-Israeli situation, but bringing into play a number of historical issues, artistic work, etc. There are also interventions by Slavoj Žižek, by Alain Badiou, by Julie Butler in the book. So, in the book, now if I quote, Udi, you say about your film Forgiveness. This was at the occasion when the film was first shown in Ramallah. You say this movie was born of grace. Law and grace are 2 key elements in Jewish religion. And these 2 should not be forgotten. Now of all times, when we are in a chaotic state of war, when people are losing their sanity and the guns are firing, being able to sit together in Ramallah and talk to each other through art opens the gates of hope. So you put your own movie in the perspective of grace, and thereby not only your own movie which is done out of grace, but the very fact that art can speak in such a situation is already a certain sign of grace. So radical grace, what do we mean by this? We start with this. It was your proposal.
Whoa!
And you had it coming. You proposed it.
And I can speak maybe for 1.5 hours and you will not be able to speak Slavoj. That would be a true
That's why I'm asking you now a sub-question, because what would be a non-radical grace?
You.
Oh, okay.
All right. I have another quote from the book, which is a quote by Slavoj. Maybe we start with these 2 quotes and see how they fit together. This is the place where Slavoj, page 176, speaks about Christian grace. And he says, Christianity is, quote, in the economy of exchange, that Christ's redemption is buying us off from sin. He paid the price. This notion of redemption and grace is a catastrophe, because it involves a trick. Apparently it's a liberation, but one in which we are forever indebted to Christ. This is for me the ultimate superego nightmare. So here we have it. One kind of pronouncement about the notion of grace, and the other, the opposite one, speaking about Christian grace. How do we figure this out?
Okay, before we start the fight, I really would like to thank you so much for having me here. I know it's not a way that Slavoj liked me to speak, but maybe I'll start with graceful. It was really an honor to show 3 of my films here. And it's very unique things, and I feel also that, and that's the last time I'm saying it, but I feel also that I owe a lot to you, Slavoj, on the way I developed those thinking, until I met you and I realized that it was all a mistake. But and there is something very personal here about radical grace that will be not so much about the thematic. I came here 2 years ago because I was thinking that my next book would call Radical Grace. And it was, I came here to speak with Slavoj a little bit, some of the ideas. And my mom, I just got to notice that my mom died. And I was here. And whoever saw my film and know a little bit, my mom is really maybe the most amazing Israeli Jew woman that was. She created the civil rights movement. She fought for gay rights before the New Dark Age in Israel. She was growing among really generals, macho men, and created a whole discourse of herself. And when she was dying, she got dementia. And suddenly this strong woman that I knew so much would fight everyone became very weak. And there was something that I got very attached to her then, to this place that was very graceful in a way. And she started to move from Hebrew to Yiddish. And this was also very interesting movement from the language of the sovereign Hebrew, the Zionist language, the language that we conquered, to the language of, there is echo, right? It's like in the cave. I'm a filmmaker, remember, I have to direct the sound also. So she's very important for me in the dialogue is with the mother that in the end went back to exile, or to the language of exile. And when she died, Slavoj really didn't know what to do with it. So he tried to hug me and he hurt me, because he doesn't know how to show feeling. And in the end he said, you know what, I'm a communist, I know to show feeling by bureaucracy. And he went and he bought me my tickets and arranged me to come back to Israel. And I saw it as a very graceful act from him. And I thought that I should come back here in another time and to remember my mom, where I heard that she lost. And she, for me, was kind of a radical grace. And that's when we speak. You know, when I tried to come here also, when you invite me, you heard that the foreign minister of Israel didn't want me here. Some people who heard about me said, no, he's a self-hated Jew, he's whatever. Because they couldn't understand that this place of radicalism, to try to change radical the essence of my place, of Israel-Palestine, and to try to create these things that I received from Edward Said, that he received it by reading Freud, that he received it by reading Moses, was to offer a place for the Jew to be able to be a Jew. And the way to be a Jew is really, the far way of being Jew is to be pure Jew. Purity is the opposite. Pure Jew is the opposite of be a Jew. And how you can create this place is that on one hand you have to be radical. You have to say, I'm fighting to the end. I'm not cutting. I'm going with my body, stand with the Palestinians when the Israeli soldier try to take the land. I'll be there in the refugee camp with my body, and I'll show where is my fidelity. And in the other hand, if I will just act as radical, in the end, and we know it from the radical left also very much, we destroyed each other because we don't get the grace, the place that moves us to make it happen. So in a way, I thought that maybe radicalism is the particulars, like maybe it's the language of politics of identity, and the grace is the universality, universalism. And with this I try to end universalism, I think that come from the West. Many times people read it as colonialism, because they use universalism in order to impose their way of thinking out of Europe and really use it almost as a language of hegemony. But to go against universalism and to go in a radical way of thinking of political, of identity, that it's all about the little groups and who am I and you won't tell me what to do, and it also creates another perversion. And I thought that we have to bring universalism from the discourse of the politics from the identity, and not from the hegemony. And for that you have to grow with the radical fight from the Popular Front, from the fight against the oppressor. But in this fight, never forget the sign of universalism. And part of something you saw in the movie, in Art Violence, and maybe the reason that my friend, the late Juliano Merchamis, was killed, that the voice when we fight Israeli oppression, it was very important to fight also for women's rights, in the same fight, not as the same fight, not as a separate fight. And maybe I thought that maybe we thought fighting for women's rights is the sign of universalism. And not to give up and say, first let's free Palestine and then see what we'll do with our women. No, it cannot work like that. And maybe this is like a first run to try to speak about my mom, about this, about radical grace without being too abstract. So I think I said enough for maybe.
But I'm not now.
The same amount of time you can speak. Like
No.
You will not impose this, as Derrida would have said, brutal metaphysical linear notion of time, on me. No, but quite seriously, the question that I asked you was not meant as some kind of a cheap, paradoxical, bad taste joke, which I often do, I admit it, provocation, but it's quite a serious question especially on the account of, again, I don't think you answered it. Why, okay, the way you squeezed out is radical is particular political engagement or whatever, and grace is universal. I still don't get it, because what I would have added is, but is authentic grace possible without this particularism even of violence, because particularism always means violence and so on. And the second question is hinted at, Mladen will later talk about it in a very naive way. I would say we have, under quotation marks, bad grace, this Christian superego grace. You know how this works, like as a free, superfluous gift for God, we got for free our deliverance. But precisely in this way, because we didn't pay for it, we are forever indebted to Christ. That's the trick. And the whole question is it possible to think the notion of grace or not? It's an open question outside this horizon.
And just in this, it's very important for me to speak about Christianity. Even the name of my movie, Forgiveness, that sounds also Christian, you have to understand the word in Hebrew means underground tunnels, mechilot. And it's a very different notion. Also, grace, for me, it's a very different notion than the Christian grace.
But what it is then?
So, let's use, if we want to use metaphysics, so if we take the Star of Redemption of Franz Rosenzweig, if you notice the relation with the God, with the metaphysic, this grace you speak, it's only from between God and humankind is revelation, and between God and the world is creation. But really, redemption, God is not involved in it at all. It's between human and the world. It's between human and other humans. So in this level of the grace, it's not a divine grace at all. He's not part of this place. So when I speak about that, it's among us. This is a place that it's the opposite of this Christian notion. And it's all the time in movement. That's why it's not forever in that. And about the violence, don't misunderstand for me that grace means non-violence, because we spoke about it in the past, when some of the reasons that some people support BDS and people afraid BDS is when you boycott, diversion and sanction against Israel. And some people here said it's the most anti-Semitic concept. But what really BDS is, for them, I don't want here to open the conversation, I just want to feel, it's really to create a space of non-violence in a place that the oppressed have the right for violence. And what it said, that violence is justified. It's in the grace, it's just not always necessary. That's what the radical grace want to say, is acknowledge the right of the oppressed for violence, but it try to create a space that it's not necessary. And just because I'm more particular than you and less philosophical maybe, when I was making the movie on the JKLF, Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front, and the head, Yassin Malik, moved from violence to non-violence. And by the way, I'm banned from India because they didn't mind if I show Muslims that are violent, but they didn't want me to show a non-violence Muslim movement. And his claim why his non-violence was very different than Gandhi, he said, I wanted to do an armed resistance. When I was 17, I took the arm, I started armed resistance against India. Then I realized that in order to do armed resistance, I need to have arms. Therefore, I took the arms from Pakistan. And after 3-4 years, I realized that I really fight for Pakistan, I don't fight for Kashmir anymore. So his issue of non-violence was very particular. It was, if I'll start my rally, I'll do everything for it. I'll go in the end, I serve another superego, another power. And this is a place that I want to hold all the time when I said radical grace. It's appeared in many places. So he moved to non-violence in order to create a new space that is free, not because he just wants peace and love. It's very different notion.
But, okay, maybe I'm naive, but I think this is maybe metaphysically the crucial point. I, of course, agree with you in principle, but what I still don't get it is, why do you call that X, this universal good thing, why do you call it grace? Because in our common understanding, grace means a kind of excessive giving or whatever. Why do you use the term grace here? Because, sorry, just to supplement you, with Alain Badiou, who also mentions the materialist concept of grace, it is relatively clear why. He means simply this involuntary, like, event is a grace because it surprises you. Grace in the sense of it's not the result of our work, of our strategic analysis. Something emerges, a new space opens up without a reason. It's like given in this formal sense. I see it in Badiou why grace. I don't
for Badiou, he tried to create a place that is between the transcendental and the eminent. You don't know if it's really come from outside or it's eminent.
I claim that he also doesn't know, but that's another.
No, okay.
yeah.
And I'm trying, first it's very...
Why grace?
But I will explain one thing.
You see, that's how, sorry, can I interrupt you?
You know about all this cultural appropriation that people are really angry that
I just wanted to tell you, you will have to suffer this. Jacques Derrida once mentioned...
When you quote Derrida, I'm already like... something weird.
Classic joke that we all used it in our work about Jews. Okay, Derrida quotes 2 mega jokes. Jewish. My favorite one, absolute, is to understand what is negativity and so on. It's the one, it's a Jewish classic, that's why I love Jews. That it's, when do you go to your church? How do you call them? Synagogue, whatever. Yes. No, I'm following here the glorious American President Bush, who in one of his most famous statements said that when he was in California, he visited a Tibetan Buddhist synagogue. But that's United States, What I want to say is this, that in a synagogue, Jews are meeting, whatever, publicly standing up, and then a rich rabbi said, "Oh my God, I am nothing. Then another rich Jewish merchant stands up and said, "Oh God, I'm also nothing, unworthy of you, nothing." Then a poor modest Jew stands up and says, "Oh God, I'm also nothing, and one of the two rich ones, he's like, who is this guy that he can simply say that he is nothing? What right does he have? And I think from the Hegelian standpoint, the rich guys were right here. Sorry. But what I want to say is there is another story, wonderful Jewish joke classic, maybe even too simple, retold often by Derrida, where, let's say this is the story of you and me, no? I ask you, tell me, how is it that you Jews are so rich? And you tell me, okay, I will explain it to you, but first give me, let's say, 100 euros, some money. I give it to you and you start. You do this, you buy a dead frog, some roots of some mysterious thing, and you bury them. And I say, and then? And you say, well, the story goes on, but another 100 euros, So it goes on, and at the end I explode. I said, really, listen, there is no secret, you just want to get my money. But you see, this is the answer how we do. And my point was, my impression is that with Grace you were pulling the same tree. I will explain it, and so on.
Because you speak all the time, but really, the philosopher Slavoj Žižek one quote Groucho Marx from the movie that he said in the court, the fact that this person look like stupid and act like stupid and speak like stupid shouldn't confuse you, he is stupid. So the issue that he speak like anti-Semitic, he look like anti-Semitic shouldn't confuse you, he is anti-Semitic.
Don't provoke me here. Don't provoke me here, because I will now say publicly the dirty idea that came to me. It's my pure love to you. We are here in proud, independent Slovenia. Why are we talking English? Because of the Jew here. We eliminate him and we can be for what we were fighting for 25 years ago.
As I said, I raised my case.
Okay, no, sorry, we shouldn't lose time now. I will be a little bit more serious. First, I was talking, remember. No, serious.
And then you don't let me explain the race issue.
Okay,
Now you have time.
Yeah, now you have time. Okay, yeah.
No, you can speak.
You see. I don't have, unfortunately, hundreds of euros. This help you.
I am a Jew, and I speak from the Jewish discourse, and I try to speak from a discourse from my language. And I had it with one of our friends, wasn't it the Catholic philosopher, the French one with the heart, with the fake heart. No. Nancy.
Yeah.
So no, because Nancy took me for a long conversation that I explained him about Judaism in order that he can win the Rida in the battle. And then when I told him something in the concept of the language, and now I go in the beginning, the word he likes so much to speak in Hebrew is really Bereshit, and all that, he told me, why you speak theology all the time to me? And I realized that when you go through genealogy of language in Latin, you think it's philosophy. And when you do it in Hebrew, you think it's theology. And this is a big mistake. Chesed, the word for grace in Hebrew is chesed. And chesed have a meaning because there is chesed and din. In the 10 sfirot of Kabbalah, there is chesed and din. And there are two energies that coming from God. So it's not the grace of God only. Judgment is and grace coming together to create this place of rachamim, of compassion. And you need them both in the way. And I come from this place that the divine, they come all the time that the divine bring you those two energies. But then the more radical Judaism said, we don't need the divine anymore. It's a different structure. We help the divine. The divine is weak, and we correcting his failure because he failed, and we are here to build him in a way. We osfim the nitzotzot, they correct the things. So I thought that I want to use something from my language, and to not to let you, the Christian, to appropriate my language, because today if you do in a university sushi, the Japanese sue you for cultural cleansing. You heard this. So don't use my language to what Jesus took it to. There is a place that is different in grace, as the same way that I told you in forgiveness, that always has a subtext in it. It's always the other meaning. So for me, the grace is the thing between, exactly from Rosenzweig, and I come from here, The grace is the things that between human, the good that human can create. And that's for me the universalism. That the place that between human we want to create these things that all of us, the leftists, we fight, you're a Stalinist, you're this, you're human rights, you're liberal, you're this, and we don't realize that there are few things that we all agree about. We're fighting, but we agree that women have to have equal rights. We agree that people are equal. We agree on few things that we never call them a name, but it makes us belong to the same group. And this is for me grace. This place is the grace. The place that I cannot name it, but it's there in all our discourses.
Why is this grace? Why is it not?
Because I choose to call it grace. You can call it donkey, you know.
No, not donkey.
It's grace because this is the place that we all kind of, we don't have a name for it, but we feel that it's belong to a giving to each other, that it's a place that creates the place that we are equal.
Why don't we say a shared hermeneutic horizon?
We can't say grace is much shorter.
Okay, no, maybe we go
But the
far
issue
here.
is, before we go on this, and if you can choose from it, the issue for me is the problem with radicalism. Because if you brought Badiou, so when he supported a huge massacre in
Pol Pot, Cambodia.
Pol Pot, and all that is when radicalism forget that should be grace as a protection. Some of the best of us go to a very extreme places because we forgot this place of
seriously, I would have, I basically agree.
And I just want to say, what wake you in the end now that you used to be a communist? Why do you speak like a Western liberal recently?
Listen, no. Because, my trick is this one. Maybe this will be an immediate answer. That I think that precisely I can well imagine an extremely ruthless, brutal, leftist maybe also, totalitarian regime which would fully justify itself in the terms of grace. Saying, grace, a common place shared by all of us, my God, we need to protect it. This was also my answer to the one who speaks about, once I had a debate with, not Agamben, the other guy, Gianni Vattimo, who, after weak thought, pensiero debole, which the name tells me all, he proposed now the idea of weak communism, And my answer, you can expect what was to him. I totally agree with you, just precisely because communism is weak, it needs a strong secret police to protect you. And I'm not kidding here. I'm afraid, I see your problem. I totally agree with it, But, okay, what I propose is that we don't go in this direction, that you allow me to do my short intervention and then, I finally begin, Okay, first, I also would like, and this is meant absolutely sincerely, to celebrate his mother. He was a wonderful woman. Just to give you an idea, she was one of the great original Zionists. She fought in 48 war and so on. So she was there, but at the same time, it's really a kind of a moral wonder. Almost, she was touched by grace, as I would have put it. And she, for example, for a couple of years, his mother was a minister of education in the last normal Israeli government, Rabin government, And you know what she did? This was heroic act there, as the minister of education or what, She, for the first time, she ordered this, school books, textbooks for elementary schools and so on. They also included parts of how, let's not forget that Palestinians were also victims here, the first dissonant voice in official education. But I want to remember her through a wonderful, I'm ready to die for such stories, anecdote. Was it she told me or you that she told you? When she was a minister, she visited as part of government delegation, not Poland, I will not repeat that one, Japan. And there, Japanese Minister of Education came to her and said, yes, I admire you Jewish people, you are great, you are realizing your project, we admire you. And she was a little bit perplexed and asked, what do you mean our project? And the Minister Japanese of Education told her, And he meant this positively. But I know what's your program. I just read Protocols of Zion, and it's excellent. I congratulate you. Your mother had a special talent for connecting. It's a totally crazy story, you know. And one of the standard jokes of me and Udi is that, but what if this is true? You know Protocols of Zion, that Russian secret police falsification but you know that I bought in Argentina years ago a right-wing book which explains that Protocols of Zion are true. Look at Hollywood. Hollywood was invented by Jews to make people stupid, no? No, okay. Let's do more serious things. You know what? I would maybe be tempted to do, just a couple of points, to do this. First, I'm still desperately trying to construct an opposition. Like, what would have been grace which is not this, let's call it naively, bad grace, superego grace? Maybe grace should be opposed to mercy here. Mercy. What do I mean by mercy? Everything that is so fashionable today, now that we'll talk about this, you told me later, you know, in what sense we are today in a period of grace. What is the predominant form of grace today? Charity, helping, and so on and so on. There is something false in this type of grace, and especially we can see it today when we have problems with refugees. Some idiots now are even attacking me that I'm becoming member of Pegida in Germany. Really, the last text that I published in New Statements and now in Spiegel, I know of 2 American leftists who demanded that I should be denounced as hate speech. Why? Because what I'm saying is simply this, that there is something wrong in approaching the problem of refugees in this liberal charity forum approach. Are we open enough to receive them? Are we human? And so on. Come here and all that stuff. I think we are playing with fire here, not because refugees are bad, but why? First, if you permit me this, and I know you both know the text, the best of this type of charity-backed grace was formulated by, Mladen, you know it better than you. The meaning of this wonderful text, the soul of man under suffering, it begins with the claim that it is much more easy to have sympathy with suffering than it is to have sympathy with thought. And here is this passage. People find themselves surrounded by hideous poverty, by hideous ugliness, by hideous starvation. It is inevitable that they should be strongly moved by all this. Accordingly, with admirable, though misdirected intentions, they very seriously and very sentimentally set themselves to the task of remedying the evils that they see. But their remedies do not cure the disease, they merely prolong it. Indeed, their remedies are part of the disease. They try to solve the problem of poverty, for instance, by keeping the poor alive, or, in the case of a very advanced school, by amusing the poor. This is what Germans are now doing with retraining the refugees, teaching them that if you see if you see a girl with a short skirt, it doesn't mean she's inviting you. I find this so humiliating, stupid. Isn't it clear what happened in Köln was a kind of a typical lower class white carnival, and the whole point is that it's no mistake in this liberal approach. They just don't know our culture. We have to explain to them that here, my God, that's why they are doing it. They know it. It's typical. I read a wonderful book. The translation was published here in Slovenia. You can find it. Robert Darnton on Big Cat Massacre and so on, where he describes this strange event in the early 18th century in France, where poor workers, textile workers, weavers, whatever, to protest, they tortured and burned cats. And it was such a display of violence, extreme brutality. So my lesson from here is what? Is precisely that like we shouldn't idealize political struggles. That's why I moderately like, although I think it's way overestimated, this film, which is now so Hateful Eight, you know. What I like is that you see that the guy who should have been the good guy, played by Samuel Jackson.
Don't tell the end, I didn't see it yet.
I will not tell the end, but I will tell something just a little bit before the end. The end is that, you know, he is the good guy who fights racism, but then he tells to an old Confederate general what he did with his son. You know, freezing him to death, then told him, I will only give you the coat to keep you alive, not to freeze if you suck my dick. And then the guy desperately sucked his dick, and at the end he didn't give him the coat, and so on. I think that that's the reality of political struggle. Now you will say, but no, this is just exaggeration, it's not like that, and so on and so on. No, I think that another fundamental presupposition, what is wrong in this charity approach, it's even worse than charity itself. It's this idea of, how should I call it, pan-humanist understanding. The stupidity that I'm attacking now is best encapsulated in some wisdom that all politically correct people like to quote. An enemy is someone whose story we were not ready to hear. I say, oh really, thank you, now I know why Hitler is our enemy, you know. In other words, I don't think that if you talk with the other, there is always, if you scratch the surface, that you will get some deep insight, some authentic view, and so on and so on. No, things are much more horrible. People really can be mean, and if they have a beautiful story to tell, it's usually to cover up the crimes that they are doing. I was quite shocked, for example, once I listened years ago, just before he disappeared into illegality, 94 I think, to Radovan Karadzic, giving an interview to, I don't know, CNN, one of those, and he was telling, he played on that gusle instrument, and he was telling wonderful Serb myths and myths, ancient, and that's my point. When you penetrate the other and you hear the deep story or whatever, this is not the truth. This is precisely the lie. I'm here for X-Files. The truth is outside. The truth in what you are doing. And there is a very good book, I quote it somewhere, called The Nazi Morality. It's not, of course, it's anti-fascist, right? But it asks the crucial question, how were the Nazis able to do it? What stories were they telling to themselves? And you also discover wonderful stories. In other words, that's the first point. This is why, and of course, incidentally, the same goes for us. I don't believe in this discovering the true voice of the other, and then we shall understand each other, and so on and so on. No, I think that the only understanding universal solidarity is at the level of much more empty universality and struggle. I believe in universality of struggle. For me, the idea is not that we should understand the Arabs. Okay, we should try, but how can we understand the Arabs when we don't understand ourselves, my God? The only thing that works is we have here our struggles in Europe, they have their own struggles. Can we somehow connect, link these struggles? So, while I am here shamelessly also attacking Muslim fundamentalism, and I think that we shouldn't elevate into a taboo this idea that somehow Muslim fundamentalism, terrorism, whatever you call it, it's not simply an excess. Somehow the space has to be opened for it within Islam. But I'm not just saying that it's just the case of Islam. I totally reject that Oriana Fallaci line of thought. Oh, but you look at Surah in Islam, you find it there. If you look at it like this, you find it everywhere. Look at what his people are doing. Read, for example, you know this better than me, who is the successor of Moses, Joshua or who? how, you know, when they come up seeing the valley, then Moses dies, and Joshua is told by God, basically, kill them all, Canaanites, and so on and so on. So, and I'm not blaming also the Jews for that. I'm saying that all religions have this horrible core. But what I wanted to say is that I think that, and here I agree with Alain Badiou, who now published a very short book on all these violent attacks, that it's not, he gives a very nice, although I think a little bit simplified account of how we have in global capitalism three main, although I think he simplifies it a little bit, three main subjective positions. First is we, the pro-Western middle classes. We think we are it. We have the top civilization, we stand today for human rights civilization, and so on. And our attitude is very ambiguous, but you describe this very nicely. On the one hand, we are arrogant, you know, all we can do to others is to teach them our values, we are the top. But at the same time, we feel threatened all the time. The others are a threat, will they, whatever. Of course, I don't agree with this. I think the greatest threat today for Europe are defenders of Europe, those anti-immigrant and so on forces. But what I want to say is that Badiou says very nicely then the second type of subjectivity is, he calls them le désir de l'Occident, desire for the West. All those in Third War who have a desire to be like the West, to join it, and he describes very nicely how they even try to imitate it in their own country. And it's true, like if you go today to, I don't know, in Africa I know, Luanda, Lagos, you have whole parts which literally imitate. You feel, if you don't look too far away, you already see slums, but that part of the city, you feel like in the center of, I don't know, Paris, London, cafeterias, Starbucks, and so on. And then you have those who are excluded, and he thinks that Muslim terrorism is really hatred, envy of the disappointed reversal into hatred and nihilist self-destruction of those who, that it's still a perverted form of appearance of the desire for the West. So just my final point, I will finish quickly. So again, this is very important. Although we can play this game, like, and I think this game doesn't work neither for Muslims nor for the Jews. Namely, this game of look at the roots. Like we have in Slovenia a philosopher whom I once knew, Tine Hribar, who likes to, he published in Slovene Main Daily a couple of weeks ago a text where he basically, you should meet him, he basically blames you, the Jews, no? He said that even Islam took it from the Jews, and he quotes all those passages like, you know, Moses, Aaron, and then, and so on, how this monotheist, absolute, murderous attitude comes from. So you can play this game with Islam, and so on and so on. But you know, all religions are opportunistic. You can find quotes for everything. Like, don't you find this in Judaism somewhere? Is it Kabbalah or already your more sacred stuff? This wonderful quote like, always be good towards refugees, don't forget that you were once a refugee, and so on. This basic identification of being a Jew with a refugee. Even Islam, no, it's not all darkness, I should surprise you. And insofar as you remember old Yugoslavia, not with any nostalgia, you should be surprised. You know, I remember when there was the civil war in early 90s, with surprise we established that the only great Jewish community in ex-Yugoslavia was in Sarajevo. You know why? Because it was a Muslim city and they let them there be. We, all of us others, we threw them out long. But what I want to say is that the key to this fundamentalist violence and so on is not Islam as such, it's a certain reaction to global capitalism. You will have your...
No, he also has to speak.
I am the hero. I, like Christ, I'm sacrificing myself.
And I'm Judah.
Sorry?
And I'm Judah, like very obvious.
Central electoral committee will decide what you are. No, sorry, let me just finish. I'm coming to the end. Seriously. What I'm saying is that today we live in a strange time, which is a really paradoxical time. On the one hand, we are more and more, at least we in the Western developed countries, politically correct. You know, you look a woman for too long into the eye, it's visual rape. I was already accused. I did like this in you are visually raping me and so on. But at the same time, brutality is growing to such an extent, and I think that while, again, we should absolutely, ruthlessly analyze, condemn Muslim fundamentalist brutality, the way they treat women and so on and so on. But we should just be fair and extend the analysis to everyone. From my standpoint, I've written about it. For example, take Catholic pedophilia. If you accuse dishonor killings and so on to be part of Muslim identity, then you should also be conscious and claim that pedophilia is somehow part of Catholic identity. But I would like to tell you a story which is really terrifying one. I mean it. With this I will conclude. It happened now a couple of months ago in Canada. It's just to show you how far we in the West can go. Because, you know, Canadians are usually very arrogant. They claim United States, America is barbarian, but the myth of Canada is this: we are the synthesis of what is the best in America and in Europe. You know, American productive capitalism with European civilization. Okay, this of course doesn't prevent them from having gang rapes, ritual murders of native women. Okay, the story. The last time I told this story in London, Jacqueline Rose, my friend, was shocked and protested that I even mentioned it. I think she was wrong. It's this politically correct sensitivity. There was a trial in March of this year. The hero, I mean this in a brutally ironic way, Bradley Barton from Ohio, was accused of killing a prostitute. Sex worker, as they put it now in politically correct terms. And he did it in a very brutal way, kind of a Norman Bates way. He had a big knife and, even more brutally than Norman Bates, put this big knife into her vagina and moved it. Okay, now you will see why I'm telling you this story. There was no denial. I mean, he admitted the act. But his defense was that this prostitute, who was, it's very important to know, how do you call it, native, whatever, American, okay, I think she was Indian, not Eskimo, whatever you call it, but she was the other native. That she specialized in rough sex, so this was part of the deal. Then when the judge asked, but wait a minute, she didn't concede being cut like that. She said, no, we were both under drugs and I just went a little bit too far. I'm not even aware what was happening and so on. Now comes the first horrible moment, and wait a minute, the second one is much more horrible. The jury set him free. They claimed it was just, how do you call it, adult, consensual sex, which, okay, ran a little bit out of control, but he wasn't responsible. Now comes the true horror, I warn you. It's incredible. Check it on the web if you don't believe me. You know how the defense, not the jury, it's not me, usually it happens to me, that how the defense, not the prosecution, succeeded in winning. They did something unheard of. They brought into the courtroom the torso, all the central part, real torso, not photos, of the body of that woman, displayed it to the jury with legs spread, and the lawyer for defense explained, you see this cut, it was probably done like that, and so on. What I find so horrible here is, first, one would have thought that if you display part of a body, that it would evoke sympathy for the victim. But no. That part of the body was so objectified, whatever you call it, that it evoked no sympathy, and it was accepted. It was the first time in Canada that part of the real body was shown there, analyzed in detail, and it was then afterwards a little bit of a shock. Because of course everybody got it clearly that imagine if it were some drunken Indian Eskimo raping a beautiful rich white woman. Would they show her torso like that? I mean, this incident, which even shocked me a little bit, this incident shows, I think, that this type of brutality that is at work here, and the brutality for me resides precisely in the fact how something like this was acceptable as a normal case. This is, I think, again, the incredibly brutal dimension of our own Western societies. I'll put it like this. Whatever we can attribute to Muslims, even in Daesh there in Islamic State, I don't think something like that would have happened there. So it's absolutely crucial to be aware that in what sense violence, especially, I often make fun of feminism, but here, my God, even I have a little bit of a good heart, although I don't believe it, is exploding. And what worries me is that a new type of violence is emerging, which is ritualistic violence. Here you see how right Freud was when he emphasized how unconscious is not some reservoir of primitive irrational instincts, but it's symbolically organized. For example, another story that I often use. What is happening in United States, South and North. In Ciudad Juarez, you have many women who now work as unmarried women, cheap workforce for putting things together, then to export them to the United States. And there is a whole tradition, at least a couple of dozen a year happened, of these girls, young women who work, are kidnapped and then raped and killed in an extremely brutal way. First, around 50 men raped a girl, and then it's really, even for my tasteless taste, it's too much. It's very ritualized how. First, with scissors, they cut off her breasts, then, and so on. But you know what's so shocking? This is the usual story in that part of the world. The only person, although everybody knows who is doing this, the only person arrested was a mother of one of these girls. Try to bring it to a court. But what is important, you see, is that it's not irrational barbarism. These murders are strictly part of a collective ritual. And the same thing happens in Canada. There is in Western Canada, around Vancouver, a tradition that young white boys, when they get drunk, they kidnap, because there are reservations close there, they kidnap an Indian, or whatever you call it, Native American girl, and not in that way, but in a similar way, serially rape her and kill her. And again, the same story, nobody is accused. Not only nobody is condemned. You know why? Because the police systematically tries to reduce these cases to domestic violence. No, it was not us, it was probably her mother was a drug dealer, whatever, and so on and so on. So what I'm trying to impart on you is precisely that. This type of charity attitude, benevolence, taking care of, is, I mean this strictly, is the other side of this extreme growing brutality. And if I finish, I didn't even read it to the end, this quote from Oscar Wilde, let me just finish it. They try to solve the problem of poverty, I already did, by amusing the poor, but this is not a solution, it is an aggravation of the difficulty. The proper aim is to try and reconstruct society on such a basis that poverty will be impossible, and the altruistic virtue have really prevented the carrying out of this aim. This is why we work with false grace, charity, helping them. No, change the circumstances. Nobody is even trying to do it. Nobody, we act as if, my God, all these people are here, now we have to help them. This is stupid. Not, we should help them, let me be clear. But what I'm saying is that, my God, the question, The question to be asked is, how can we change the situation there? Where are we co-responsible for it? My God, this refugee flux is not a problem of charity. I hate these titles. Did Europe lose its heart? I hope it will lose it, because this is not a problem solved with heart, but with cold political passion, where you try to change the situation and so on and so on. And just really to conclude now, I'm ultra pessimist here. I will boast now a little bit. A couple of days ago, I was on phone with my friend Julian Assange, who told me he's totally pessimistic now. He told me that it's clear what is happening. Europe will reject the refugees. We Balkan countries will also try to limit them. They cannot be all in Turkey, so what should they do? Should they go back? No, because the situation in Syria and Iraq is getting worse and worse. It's absolutely clear that this is not really a war on terror. I don't think there is a war on terror going on. Nobody really wants to fight terror. They just use terror to fight their own fights. Turkey is using fight on terror to kill their own, to control their own Kurdish resistance, and Kurds are the only serious local force fighting ISIS. Russia is playing their own games, Saudi Arabia their own games, and so on and so on. So you see, my leftist answer is not, no, terror is not the answer, war on terror. No, I claim there is no war on terror really going on. All countries, we, even Israel is suspiciously silent about Islamic State. No, why? Because it prefers Islamic State to Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is Shia, Islamic State is Sunni, so, they are all using war and on terror to fight their own geopolitical battles there. That's why I claim, of course we should take care of the refugees and so on, but my God, we will be all lost if we don't go a step further into much more radical political economic action. That would be the true, okay, I'm ready to call it the other grace, but not this humanitarian blackmail, like in this country, in Slovenia, maybe to inform you. I still remember 3-4 months ago, when refugees were not yet really here, my God, how I despise them. Some of Slovene artists, writers, it was popular to do an interview and to say, I hope you remember it, my apartment is open for them, please let them come. Now they all disappeared and so on, And so on, I don't like this humanitarian competition. I like solving problems. And the greatest madness for me is here. The leftist delusion, a couple of friends from the West criticizing me, so they said, don't you think that getting as many refugees as possible to Europe is a unique chance for a revolution? Because we in Europe have a good revolutionary theory and ideas, but we lack the revolutionary agent working class. I told them, are you crazy? So now you want, as a good capitalist, to import the revolutionary agent? It will be, if you ask me, I'm seriously a radical pessimist. I really think that maybe even war in Europe, and much more serious than that war, is opening if we don't change the terrain, if you don't move out of this false grace in the sense of humanitarian competition and all that and so on and so on. I spoke too long, I know, but fuck you, you have to suffer me. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. No,
Can I just? That's really. And also I want to say that this radical grace word came to me, and it is maybe important, and I know it's not so much your language, but it came from when I spoke the eulogy to my mom. So for me, when I spoke about chesed in Hebrew, it has connect to a feminine revolutionary woman, that it's different, and that's when in my movie Local Angel, when I show Hanan Ashrawi and my mother, it's a whole different discourse and I won't say that women speak different than men, I won't make it so simplicity, but a certain feminine voice that comes through inside the white male language, it's the only thing that can destroy the white male language from inside, and that's only if they just be graceful, ta 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 ta, it's nothing, it just repeat the patriarchal language. But if it's come with radical grace, it is a moment of that can.
Just a test. Would you add to this line my favorite one? And I will again accuse me of being a Christian. Joan of Arc. This was for me grace, but it meant grace like real war, killing the enemies. She was for me the figure of radical grace. And Alemba, you agree with me here.
That's why I have to protect the words from you guys. It's exactly the moment. You sometimes people take you seriously when you said you're a Stalinist, and then I have to deal with it back home. So it's not so easy always to be your friends, Gabon. and I just want, and this is the last thing, there is something in a way that when you speak about the refugees, you sound racist, and then you speak about the Western, and then you sound, you're against the Western people. But what's happened when I see all your language together, there is something that I don't have in my language, and maybe it's because I'm not from Europe, or maybe because I did cross the line and I created a binational situation. But there is all the time in the background of what you tell, I feel the other and you. Like when you tell the story about in Canada, you're already aware that this audience already in the background hate this situation, totally against it. So there is a kind of a Western moral that is against this pornographic story. In the same time, you know that you entertain the audience with a very pervert story. Like it's holding the whole language that they know. And when you said, no, listen, Islam is not so bad. It's already in the background that Islam is really bad. And now I'll tell you, I'll be liberal and so no, it's not so bad. It also exists in Judaism. And of course it exists in Judaism. Judaism speak about genocide. Islam don't speak. Jihad, it's never genocide. In jihad, you just have to convert the other if he's fight you to Muslim. In Amalek, in Judaism, is to massacre you cannot, like King Saul lost his kingdom just because they have grace on one person in the Amalek. So of course I can tell, but why do I have to create a certain apologetic language to explain the other that is like us? If you break this structure that there is the Christian and then there is the other, but they are really not so terrible because we're also terrible, because of course what the story that they did in Cologne, it's nothing compared of years of young prostitution walking in Berlin and rich middle class white men going and pick them in the cars in the forest. And the same people who doing it, they are the one who's so shocked in what's happening in Cologne. And that's kind of obvious for us already. We know that they are the same. We know that both of them, it's a different kind of exploiting women, creates like treating women as an object and all that. The creation, where is the language that the other will not be the Muslims that are not so bad, but the other will be the neo-Nazis and the people and the fundamentalist Muslims, and they'll be together as the other.
I see your point.
And this is, and it's cut the place differently because they don't let out in Cologne to let refugee to come into the swimming pool. And you'll be just to criticize some of the radical leftists who said, but why they're not doing it, it's right. But the same way, I never saw that in Germany they locked swimming pools for German, and all neo-Nazis are Germans. And yet they never thought that when there is a neo-Nazi attack, we said we won't let German to come into our swimming pool anymore. So
first, all neo-Nazis are by far not German. You should now add at least Litva, Latvia, Estonia, Hungary,
and so on. No, I speak the neo-Nazis in Germany right now.
Okay, I agree with you that all German neo-Nazis are German.
Yes. And so always when it's not the other, we see them as particular, and when it's the other, we see them as one somehow. Even if we said we don't see them as one, we see them as one. And the last thing is about this grace, and it's not about charity so much to say that it's a different, because I'm a pessimist, and with this I'm also in a funny way pessimist like you. I said I will do any trick possible to keep the gates of Europe as long as I can for refugees, not in order to create a proletariat revolution here, but because I have the memory as a Jew for what's happened when the Jewish refugees knocked on doors and the doors were closed. And every refugee I can get here by by tricking you, by conning you, the European, and save more and more people. And after, I'll try to deal with my binational concept to fight the people here or not to fight. But first we have to save, because horrific things happen. And I just want to end it with, in refugee camp of Yarmouk, people were massacred, and their parents and everyone are from Israel, from Palestine, and they cannot find refugee in Palestine, in their own hometown. But somebody from Russia that is a Jew can come and find refuge in Israel, but the Palestinian refugee from Yarmouk are massacred and cannot find a refugee. I feel that I have also an obligation. If I cannot open my doors, I will open your doors to them, you know, because you kicked me out from here. So I will open the doors for the Palestinian refugee for Yarmouk as much as I can to bring here. And even if I don't know exactly all the theoretical way how they will live together, first of all, I will save them.
No, can I, just very briefly, then you should come. First, when you said, you know very well why I also, because it's too abstract to say, yes, it's all religion, this, that, they are all, I am maybe overreacting to a certain hidden taboo, which is very much part of the Western so-called radical left, which is taboo on so-called Islamophobia. The moment you mention anything like that, you are accused of Islamophobia. I'm just saying, let's really do what you are doing. And I'm not saying blame the Islam. I agree with you. They have it all and so on. When you said about, what you said about refugees and so on coming to Europe, I wonder if I agree with you, you know for what reason? It's easy, you know what I would prohibit you? This reaction. Okay, people follow your politics, 10 Angela Merkels pop up in Europe, kommen Sie, come, no? And then you get in 5 years Pegida and Le Pen in power, and what will you say then? Nothing. You will be satisfied in your stupid oh my God, you see, we were right.
I'll start
Europe
a fight here.
Sorry?
What do you mean? I'll do a fight. What can I do?
Yeah, and you will lose.
But maybe I will lose, but
no,
I have more soldiers. I will lose already from the beginning. Don't you see it? Look in Israel. Look in Hungary. There is no Jews in Hungary, and there is less Jews in Hungary, more anti-Semitic there. I don't need the refugees to have La Pan. The refugees just the excuse from La Pan. Europe, you're becoming fascist without the refugees.
No.
You lose already, yes.
No.
Yes.
No,
yes.
It's too simple.
It's too simple to blame the refugees on that. That's the truth. It's exactly the absent, and that's, you know, the good part here, that everything I said now, I learned from you.
No.
Swear to God, really.
You know what I mean. I agree with you that it's not. Move, no? Yeah, I agree with you that it's not the refugees who are the cause. But if you, the anti, you know, it's the same as if you say, and it's also true in exactly the same way, that for Hitler it's not really true about the Jews.
It is true about the Jews.
No.
Yeah.
No. I think Jews fit in just a certain phantasmatic point which could have been
that called the Jew.
Yeah. It's not necessarily the Jews. In the same sense here, I claim that, okay, I will put it like this. I agree with you of this anti-immigrant blah blah, or no anti-immigrant, sorry, what you call European fascisation, and then that this is not a reaction to the immigrants and so on. But I think that just playing the politics of bringing in the refugees without any
I agree with you. I don't say that.
Yeah, everybody is saying that they agree with me, but then I ask you, what are you doing?
No, I have more concrete concept than you. I'm really going in. We create communities, mixed communities that are fighters, that believe. That's what I do in my because Israel is not so different. We don't let the Palestinian refugees also because we claim there will be too much Palestinian in the Jewish state. We use the whole European, like the whole the whole Zionist movement, it's a Protestant country. You understand that Zionism, it's Protestant. It's not Judaism. It's like we go, we conquer, we teach the other. The same language we use in Israel. We won't let the Palestinian in because they get majority and will be more fight and all that. And we, in order we create communities that are Palestinian and Jews will fight together. And here, instead of said yes to bring refugees or not to bring refugees, and all the new text you write about bring them in order, no, go bring them and join them. Join them and create a language, because half of the refugees are people who run away. You know, it's like me, half of the refugees are intellectuals from Syria, people who run away from ISIS, people who run away from Assad. Some of them are from communist regime. Now from Turkey, probably many leftists will run away pretty soon. I don't know exactly, but find your community and join them, but don't speak about them as the other, that maybe we should bring them, maybe we shouldn't bring them. If we bring them, what we'll do with them. We have to find a language that is not not duplicate the language of them and us. And it's not easy. I don't say it's easy, but at least I know that I'm doing it. I will fail probably like you. I don't think that I bring any success, but in the meantime, even in Berlin, it's so interesting to see in Berlin a whole young Israeli Jew that ran away because they cannot handle anymore the hyper-fascist Israel and also the prices there. And when you do a party in my home in Berlin, you suddenly see like 100 people, and almost half of them are Palestinian who ran away from there, and half of them Israeli Jews, and they almost speak the same language. Now we are a small community, but it is example of a different kind of cutting the dichotomy of the other and not the other.
I agree with you here, but I don't think it will work in that way. I think, now I speak as a Lacanian, you underestimate what I'm tempted to call the real of cultural difference. You underestimate the extreme power of everyday racism. And I think that I put it even in this way, maybe. I think that why this obsession with bring us together and so on. I hear a madman, I'm ready to go to the end. For me, which is a model country of peaceful ethnic coexistence in Europe. You know which one I admire. Switzerland. Okay, they are a mafia country, dirty, but culturally. Why? Everybody who knows Switzerland knows this, especially the Germans and the French. Culturally, they more or less totally ignore each other. And that's why they have a nice life. I don't believe in this forceful I want distance. My idea is not...
I'll end it with kind of agreement with you, and we'll move to Mladen. The agreement, it's what you said, it's exactly what Edward Said said in Freud and the non-European.
Yeah.
When he offered the language of binationalism, it doesn't try to create this harmony. That's, by the way, why we use binationalism and not one-state solution. The communists or the Popular Front, they use one-state solution, like one man, one vote, we all individual. And when we speak
one
about
woman, no vote.
and when we speak about binationalism, it's exactly, and I can end with this quote of this beautiful poem of Mahmoud Darwish: "Let us walk together in two separate ways.
That's true. Yeah,
let us walk together and let us be kind."
Yeah, absolutely agree. That would be my program, yes. Just the last thing, but really...
Let's agree for a second, hold it. Okay, now...
No. I only want to say that I still have a tight problem, although also Alain, but you use this term. I'm just, and maybe Mladen, my God, you wrote a book on it, your first one, fascism. I'm afraid of this there is something specific going on today with this very weird and dangerous developments in Europe. And I wonder, I always have the gut feeling that this quick, as the Germans say, Schimpfwort fascism, is kind of a too quick a move. I wonder if it covers really. I think there is something much more, for example, the way in which we should think. Already with anti-Semitism, you may probably know this, Etienne Balibar already 10 years ago proposed a very simple but I think theory which points in the right direction. He said that today what was still 100 years ago specific structure of anti-Semitism is getting globalized today. That's why, and you agreed with me, I propose this crazy thesis that today's in Israel radical Zionism is the latest stage of anti-Semitism. And to do a good bow to you, you know how this happened. We were once at some round table, although we have a fight who said what, no?
I said it.
Yeah, okay. But the point was this one, that in Berlin, the Israeli cultural attaché or whatever turned to me and said, but why are you a friend of this guy, of him? Don't you see that he is just trying to exploit you, to get more money, fame, and so on, you know? And my reaction, he claims his reaction that was...
And my reaction was...
Yeah, was that but so you are telling me that he is a Jew, really, you know, like the Jew portrayed him, and then we had the debate...
So you think that the Jew, the only reason for me to do something is for money, and you call me anti-Semitic?
No, the Israeli, no, but you know what no, seriously, and I had the same experience in Israel. People were attacking him for, he's not really one of us. He pretends to be a Jew, but he is really cosmopolitic, wants just international, all the cliches in European nation-state face. Again, like, what was the big motive with Charles Maurras, all those against the Jews? They are our citizens, but they have their own priority. They are not really one of us. They are repeated now against so-called self-hating Jews. So I absolutely, seriously, I take this, that today's Zionism, I got your lesson, that original Zionism was something much more subtle, even with potential progressive views. But today's official anti-Zionism, I mean, things are getting so crazy in Israel now. Do you know that now you have a couple of politicians who are members of Netanyahu's government who are saying publicly, let's stop the game, West Bank is ours. Why? Because it says so in the Bible. And then I'm asking myself, wait a minute, if this is not religious fundamentalism, maybe, you know what I mean, like, then Israel tries to present itself as a civilized secular country against, this is a very sad movement, because I claim that the ultimate victim of all this will be precisely the Jews. They will precisely lose what you will talk about there, this universal, they will just become another land grab.
Here is your lecture, by the way, we just brought it for
In our, me and Udi's immediate, in our incredible mercy and benevolence, this is our grace to you. We now allow you to talk. It's incredible how grateful we are. I'm shocked at my goodness.
Yes, well, this is impossible.
Yeah, but it's real.
I don't know if I can say anything after this. I mean, it all just went in all directions. But maybe I will stick to the initial problem I had with this, and this is why we started with the question of radical grace and whether grace makes sense, or whether there's a good concept of grace, or whether there can be a separation, a distinction between grace and mercy. And well, my particular point of entry would be the Merchant of Venice, and you have a piece in the book also on the question of Shylock and the way the Shylock story which has shaped in so many ways the development of Christian versus Jew as inscribed in the very workings of capitalism. And the story of the Merchant of Venice is basically the story of pitting against each other two logics. And one logic is the logic of the contract, the bond, the law. And you say in this quote, the law and the grace, these are two things. There's two things which go together, which are the key to the Jewish identity, as it were. So in Merchant of Venice, you have precisely those two logics pitted against each other. They are at the extreme points. You have the logic of contract, which is the logic of abiding by the law, and this is Shylock's logic. He has his bond, and by his bond, he should be given, he should take this pound of flesh. On the other hand, you have the logic of Portia, who swears by mercy, who swears by grace throughout the piece. And in this court scene, it's precisely being pitted against each other, the sticking by the letter, the Old Testament just sticking to the letter, as opposed to the New Testament as the logic of mercy, that which is beyond the letter, beyond the law. For what is mercy? This is something which is freely given without being in any way obliged to give it. This is a gift beyond obligation. And when they try to convince Shylock to give up the bond, this is the argument she uses. Okay, by the bond you win. But isn't mercy something infinitely more? And she has this famous speech on mercy. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as a gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesses him that gives and him that takes. This is, I think, a very essential definition of mercy, of Christian mercy for our culture, which came to shape the very ideas about what Christianity is. And I will just add that she is the speaker for the Christian mercy in this, but actually this very quote is based on the Old Testament. Actually, the source for this quote is Ecclesiastes. Oh, how fair a thing is mercy in time of anguish and trouble. It is like a cloud of rain that cometh in the time of drought. So she unwittingly, or maybe very deviously done by Shakespeare, quotes actually the Old Testament on mercy and grace. So I'm trying to come to a simple point. First, that mercy is something given without obligation. It's beyond the law. It's a transgression of the law. And because it's done without obligation, without it's free, it opens a debt. You are infinitely indebted for mercy. I mean, you are indebted by the law, but the terms in which you are indebted are perfectly clear. They're spelled out in the contract. But when you are given something for free, when just out of mercy, then this opens a debt which you cannot repay. And this is the difficulty, the trick, the something one cannot quite get out of with the concept of mercy. An infinite indebtedness. And it can only be, the response to mercy can only be the response of love. You can only give love in return to someone who bestowed mercy on you. And it blesses him that gives and him that takes. It gets the mercy, because he who gets the mercy should be infinitely grateful, and he who gives the mercy feels gratified by his own generosity, as it were. By being graceful, by being merciful, he is gratified by his own act of generosity, giving something for nothing. And politically, he's the one who, by being merciful, displays that he's entitled to the position he's occupying. Mercy is always bestowed from a certain position of power. You bestow mercy. You are not obliged to do it. You bestow mercy. You are in a position to give it or not. The moment you give it, you actually justify yourself as being merciful. And, well, the development of capitalism from this opposition between Shylock and Portia is twofold, I think. One line could be called Capitalism as Universal Shylockry. This is actually the title of a paper by Simon Critchley and Tom McCarthy. So what happened? This is already Marx's argument. We have all become Jews. We have all become practical Jews. We have all become Shylock. Shylock might have lost the case, but we have actually, the Judaism has become the practical underlying, the calculation, the profit, the usury, the interest, has become the underlying logic of the whole society. And Portia's position in this, which is the position of mercy, historic position of mercy, may seem as having been pre-modern in response to the modernity of Shylock as the proponent of capitalism. She still stands for certain religious assets, mercy, etc. And my claim would be that she is actually postmodern. That what happened now as the new development, the recent developments of capitalism, is rather that something that one could call beyond the Shylock principle, which means that we are at the mercy. The mercy has become a sort of generalized background of what is going on. We are at the mercy. And it's in, I mean, you spoke before about the question of mercy being the universal, and even in relation to mercy, law is something particular. So here we have a certain universality of mercy. I mean, mercy by definition is not universal. By definition, law is universal. Mercy is an exception to the law. It's always an exception. You can be merciful or not. It's a state of exception. Mercy is a state of exception in relation to the law. One can speak in Agambenian terms. Sovereign is precisely the one who can bestow mercy. It's the privilege of the sovereign, because he's not bound by law. He's somewhere above the law in order to be merciful, to be able to bestow mercy. So I think that this actually hangs together with the new developments in capitalism, that there is a certain state of emergency, the universalized state of emergency, which more and more qualifies our situation, is the universalized state of mercy. We are at the mercy. We are at the mercy. If you look at Lazzarato, and he always talk about the indebted man as being the sort of prototype subjectivity of modern times. You are in debt, and countries are in debt. Everybody is in debt. The fact of being indebted is the universal fact. Is the universal formative fact of subjectivity of today. Being in debt is precisely being at the mercy of the other. I mean, the amount, there's an infinitization of a debt, which goes hand in hand with the universalization of the structure of mercy. And this is, and there's another part, which the one that Slavoj spoke about, that actually some very basic social injustice is treated as a question of charity. So, by definition, we see the poor as something that should be dealt with by our generosity, by our good heart, by the question of let's be charitable. The charity institutions are always, if you look at who are the most popular Slovenes in this Delo vote, you always get the charity, because they're such good people. I mean, they are willing to give their own resources and really help the poor, help the refugees or something. So this is another part of treating very basic structural injustice, class antagonism, through the question of mercy and charity. I mean, on both ends, we are at the mercy, and we are the ones who are called upon to bestow mercy and thereby try to alleviate social injustices. So this is why the question of mercy, I think, is so profoundly problematic. And everything, I mean, if you speak about radical grace, everything hinges on distinguishing this kind of grace from the question of mercy. And from the whole superego logic, the more you are, the debt you cannot repay, the more you give, the more you are guilty, the more you are indebted, you cannot get out of it. So this is where my theoretical interest in the question of inventing a certain grace, which I don't know if grace can be equated, can ever be equated with universality, because grace is an exception. If also in this, but you line of thinking, I mean, he speaks about grace. Event is a grace, precisely because it's exceptional. I mean, you are in a state of grace if you are in a state of great exception from the universality of the law. So this is where I think conceptually the problem lies, of that quote that I read at the beginning, that the grace and the law are the key ingredients of the Jewish identity. How to configure them? I can see how they are configured in a Christian civilization, and it's a catastrophic way. I I mean, historically it has become more and more catastrophic. And here, yeah.
You helped me so much to think. I mean, really thank you for that. And I'm going almost to take it the opposite place, but without you, I think I couldn't do it. I see Shylock very different than that. It's definitely is not capitalism. Portia is exactly the Christian grace, and it's not stage of exception. It's exactly like Agamben said that stage of exception it's eminent to the law. It's not really out of the law. It is the law. And it's exactly what the grace of Portia, it's exactly the universalism that I said that come from colonialism. What does Portia do? The minute she loses, she called grace. The grace is only for the privilege. The minute she loses, the minute the case is end, she calling grace. And when the minute it comes, she can call Christianity to destroy them. Suddenly when the law, the universal law doesn't function, the universality of the God, of Christianity, of the grace is really there in order to serve only the privilege. And Shylock is the opposite for me in this story than capitalism. Shylock is the radical. What Shylock is doing there? He tells them, you, the privilege, you, easy for you. In a way, it's like Slavoj said, always the hegemony want peace. Why? Because peace, it's a status quo. He said, Palestinians speak for justice. Israel said, yeah, we want peace. What do you mean we want peace? You stay where you are, we stay where we are. This is the grace of Portia. Whenever the privileged need Christ, they can call him from up and destroy the claim of this and use the metaphysical in order to control the discourse. So this stage of exception, it's within the system of it itself. And what Shylock is doing, what Shylock is doing here, he tells them, you know, St. Paul said that the circumcised, the Jewish circumcised of the flesh, it's the circumcised of the heart, right? That's what St. Paul said. That's Christianity, right? Israel of flesh is Israel in spirit. The circumcised of, and they try to ignore the body. And what Shylock is telling her, you said it's, you Christian said it's the circumcised of the heart. I will circumcise your heart. Give me two flesh from your heart. I bring you back to the physique of me, of the other, the one you don't want to see, the one you want to call it the capitalist, the one, I bring you back my body. And it was so strong for me to see what's happened to me, and I wrote these texts because I saw Al Pacino doing it in Broadway, not in the cinema. The cinema, it's horrific film. In Broadway...
You mean Merchant, no? For the
Merchant, the Merchant. Because he did also it as a film, and the film is terrible. But in stage, we see a part that he didn't really change Shakespeare, just add something Shakespeare didn't write, and it's all happening silent. When he give up everything, they see how they baptize him. And there's a whole moment that Al Pacino go and get baptized. And you see all the humiliation that this grace forced the other. This exactly the universalism of colonialism, I said. And he got in and he come out totally defeated, and he pick up the yarmulke from the ground, and he put it on his head, the yarmulke, and he looked at the citizens of Venice. And when I saw it, all I heard is like suddenly he connect me to the Palestinian freedom fighters in Jenin. I was there still in Jenin, and said, we will be back. You can try to force us, you can try to take us down. And what the Palestinians did is exactly, all they argue of Palestine, and it's not only now they spoke about that God gave us the land. Always the Palestinian, that's what Hanan Ashrawi said to my mom in the movie, said we always spoke on behalf of the law. International law means this land is ours, we have the right to live here. And you came with God. And she told my mom there, it was in 2001, she told her, because you are fundamentalist, in the end we won't have a choice but call God as well to the discourse. Because the minute the Israeli didn't have answer anymore to the call of the law, of the Shylock, said, this is my body, I'm here, it's my body, I deserve it. And they said, no, we have a mission from God, we are metaphysical, God sent us. And when you spoke with liberal Jew in Tel Aviv, at a certain time they couldn't explain in which right they built Tel Aviv University on the Palestinian village that never did any wrong for them. Sheikh Mounis, in a way, was a friendly Palestinian village that Prime Minister Sharet promised them to come back because they were friendly. And the minute they left it, they destroyed it and built Tel Aviv University. And when you speak with them, that's when we came with this amazing sentence that the people in Tel Aviv, even though they don't believe in God, they're sure that God promised them the Holy Land. And this is the grace of the colonists. They can call whenever they want the metaphysic. And Shylock is the resistant. So when I speak about grace, it's exactly the opposite. So maybe it's good that we speak about terms, and maybe it's first time that maybe I am the designated Jew here. You know, that for me it's a whole different thing. Shylock is the radical grace for me there. He stands against the whole, why he's fighting for it? He said, you stop, treat me as no one. Like you stop this using your culture and your grace and Christianity to do whatever you want with me. It's time for you white men to take responsibility. This is really Shylock for me.
Well, about Shylock, I think he's a
really good Jew, right?
No,
I protect my people.
No. I think there's something profoundly ambiguous about Shylock, and I really think he's a great figure of this because of this ambiguity. And Merchant of Venice was the most popular piece in Nazi Germany because the Nazis thought this is the only classical play which can be used as anti-Semitic propaganda. And at the same time, in 1936, there was the first Jewish production of Merchant of Venice in Palestine, with Shylock set into the role of the national hero. So you could see, precisely at the same time, Shylock could be read in these two completely different ways. And if you look, Marx, in the first volume of Capital, he quotes Shylock twice. First, he speaks about a certain law in the 1840s in England, which tried to protect, a law which was implemented to prevent children, women labor, and to shorten hours, working hours. But the capitalists, I mean the owners, the factory owners, the managers, they found their ways around it. They found the loopholes in the law. They just read the law very literally, stuck to the letter of the law, and there, in order to, well, not to do what the law was actually aimed at. And there Marx quotes Shylock and says, "My deeds upon my head, I crave the law." This is what the capitalists say. So if the capital could speak, if there was a prosopopoeia of capital, what would capital say? It would quote Shylock.
You will know.
Wait.
This is why Marx is anti-Semitic.
No, wait. This is the first quote. And then there is the second quote, where he speaks about the proletarians, and he puts a footnote, and he says, just a moment, "You take my life when you do take the means whereby I live." So this is the words pronounced by Shylock when they confiscate all his goods.
Yeah.
And if there was a prosopopoeia of a proletariat, if proletariat could speak, what would it do? It would quote Shylock. So it's highly symptomatic that Marx uses the same figure of Shylock as the sort of prosopopoeia of the capital and the prosopopoeia of the proletariat. He's a completely ambivalent figure. Marx himself understands him in two completely different ways. He's the model oppressor and the model oppressed, as it were, on both sides.
Can I add something which will be very constructive now, because I want to maybe even try to reconcile you. Believe me or not, I will be very brief. I think that I would have put it in this way. It's wrong to think that first there is a strict exchange by the rules of law, I pay you, you pay me back, and then there comes the excess and so on. I think the crucial role here is played, I always loved it, by the so-called ritual of potlatch, because it brings the two together. in potlucks, I organized a feast for you here, like we organize it here. You organized a feast, but each of us has to pretend that the movie is totally like grace, mercy, you know. In potlucks, you give a gift voluntarily as an excess, but it's regulated. The other has also voluntarily to, and I think that this logic of potlucks, this access to exchange, is all the time part of exchange. It's a kind of a blind spot of exchange. You cannot have, this is why, this is a pro-Shylock argument. That's how I would read you, Mladen. It's ingenious what Shylock does, precisely because law of exchange, no mercy, is founded on an exception which is necessary. The way to ruin it is to stick to it literally without exception, because as you pointed out, the trick of Western legal just exchange is that you always have to have that kind of reference to God or what, an exception. That's why, and I will conclude surprisingly, my ultimate example of grace would be to, like, you know, I will be evil now, but in a very friendly way. You know, like, you invite me to Israel, potlucks, you are free to come, we love you, expecting me, no, that...
So you arranged all that for me?
No, what I mean, no, of course I didn't, that's why. What I'm saying that maybe the radical gesture of grace would be to break the potlucks and come to your feast, and they say, no, I will not give you a feast. You know what I mean? To break the logic. To break the logic of potlucks. Maybe only in this way you open up the space, you know. So again, I think it's absolutely crucial, this point, and there is Marshall Sainlis, you know, I think that's his name, Sainlis, who did, I met him once in Chicago, he asked in a wonderful way all these questions, like, when does potlucks turn into exchange? And his point is temporality, you know, like, if you give me something, a certain time has to pass, then I pay you back. But if I pay you back immediately, it's considered very unfriendly, very brutal, and so on, all that stuff. So no, I totally agree here, at least with both of you, that precisely there is no, Shylock is proletarian, precisely insofar as he sticks to the law much more than. The problem is not Shylock. The problem is that capitalists who stand for the law are not able to stick to it, really.
That's important, because I don't want to
of
create
course
too much harm.
Because I said it. Okay, but let's go on. Yeah.
It's important because you said it, and I don't want to conclude with a happy end here. We'll do it to a happy end after.
Yeah.
So. I think that Marx, in this case, it's nice that he said this and this, but in this case, on the first one, it is a little bit his anti-Semitic rule here. I think in this part, but he's missing something.
Which is?
And I will say, first he's missing really that he you imagine that Shylock and Portia are really equal powers. It's like two ideologies, and he ignored the body. And that's really a discourse that wasn't in time of Freud. It's a different body. The body of Shylock is the body of the oppressed. It's the body of one that will lose by definition. I don't know how it will end. He will lose. The minute it starts, I know he will lose. There is no way he can win. And what Shylock is doing is like the BDS, the Palestinian with the BDS. They're so obnoxious, right? They said, what BDS asked to boycott Israel? We asked the international law. We ask for non-violence. That's the rule. Because they ask so much for the minimum of what the oppressed, all he can come is against the capitalist or the colonialist with the law, because he knows that they never stick to the law. Ever they stick to the law. They're always it's eminent. It's eminent to the law, the exception of the law, of them. And what the BDS do is exactly what Shylock do. They said, but you said international law, if I was born here, I have the right to do it. You said that if there is a occupation, I have to write for violent things. You have, like the exactly, and then it's created such a fear because they put this mirror, exactly what Shylock do. And then Hillary Clinton want to make a law against a non-violence act of the Palestinians of BDS in America. And she said, I will make a law against it because they stick to the law. So it's not that Shylock really believe in the law. It's like, it's naive. It's naive to say that he really represents the law. It's naivete. He cares about the law. He used the only tool that the oppressed have to use in this case. And Portia, it's not that you have, when she come in this position in purpose, she dressed as a man, because it's only a white man can present it. Only when she takes the mask, suddenly there is a whole, I don't want to open it, but the end of it, suddenly she become a woman and there is the ring monologue. That it's totally different story. So suddenly when she's the woman, she give a whole different text. But in this position, she can act only as the man and only as the law that include the exception of the law. That's the structure. It's built in. So I think that Marx read wrongly Shylock here, because he really thought that he represent capitalism. And he didn't realize that he represents the weak, the oppressed, the black, the one who has no right, that all he can come to us is that to use that maybe we believe that we have a law and to try to use it against us. And he lost already from the beginning. Shylock lost already from the beginning.
Can I add something which, agreeing with you, it's true, even examples, because I know a little bit American situation, for example, it's very concrete, nothing very theoretical. It would be interesting to write a legal history of contracts between American government and Indians, Native Americans. It's all one big story of broken laws. And which tribe, Cherokee or which one? It's pure strategy, because this was the one tribe in the East still where integration perfectly worked. They become civilized merchants and so on. The whites were annoyed by them. They moved them to the West. In some miracle again, 10 years later, they functioned perfectly. They were richer than their stupid goat-fucking white neighbors who lived around. For the third time or second, they moved them in some stupid desert so that they guaranteed that. So I agree, but would you agree with another point? That seems to me the perversity of certain reference to Holocaust, which is really an obscenity for me. Namely, your mother is reported to, good role for her, to have heard, who is the big one, Golda Meir, say that Golda Meir once said with a certain satisfaction, when people complained, aren't we too military, that after we suffered Holocaust, we can do whatever we want.
After Eichmann trial.
After trial, now we can do, yeah. Now, isn't this that precisely in a very Christian way? Zionists here try to capitalize on Holocaust as their infinite sacrifice, which, creates an infinite debt.
That's the most true about that's why we all the Israeli kids go against to Auschwitz and Auschwitz all the time.
But won't you agree here something
and
else?
And then to call the Arabs Hitler.
But my argument here would have been that precisely this reference to Holocaust is the worst sacrilegious thing. It's horrible. They are spoiling, humiliating. This is a shameful act to use Holocaust, which was, my God, one of the absolute crimes, as a bargaining chip in colonizing a little bit.
For how many years they didn't get to translate Primo Levi to Hebrew. In the end, they couldn't, because Primo Levi is really, in a way, for me, is my spiritual thinking about the issue. And he, in a certain time, he said, after Lebanon war, he said, every nation have their Jews, and the Palestinians are the Jews of Israel. And when that's come from Primo Levi, you don't really want to bring him there. But
I agree with you, and you will. I will now tell a joke for the public. You will not get it because it's Slovene. I love Primo Levi.
Said it in Slovene.
No, but you will. The founder of Slovene nation, the first books published, is a guy called Primož Trubar. Trubar, family name, Primož with Z, with like Žižek. And I liked so much Primo Levi that I remember in elementary school, and the teacher laughed at me, I always pronounced it as, Primo Strubar. So that's my love for Primo Levi, okay, but that's another story. No, but I agree with you, it's so, just go when, instead of being I'm against historical relativization, but instead of being caught in these polemics today, it's so good to look a little bit back, like how different is Primo Levi from all this Holocaust industry, or even, and that's, you taught me in this, my great argument when I'm arguing with my Jewish friends, or not such great friends, in Israel is, listen, don't believe me, quote, read your own founding fathers, and you taught me this, what Ben Gurion and Moshe Dayan were saying in the 50s. If you now say this in Israel, you are almost arrested. You know, Ben Gurion, the founder, he said openly, we have no right to this land. We are taking it from others who are living here. It's not a question of right, it's a question of who will win and so on. I mean, they were refreshingly open, and that's the irony. At that point in the 50s, where Israel was really not a stable land still, they were able to talk like that. Now that Israel is a superpower with everything,
now again they're going to speak like that from a different angle. Before he spoke from a place of weakness, and today, and then was the denial this time, we are not, and now again from
weakness.
Very,
why? Because
now from a vanity, then they were struggling for beginning of the nation, said it's a war, you know. Then after, when we felt a bit stronger, we came with all the liberal explanation, no, we are so good, we are the most moral army, And now when this explosion of vanity, again they said we don't have to explain nothing. Like if you go to internet today and you hear Israeli writing, let's burn Arabs, why just burn one family, you know, like stuff like that, they don't look anymore for appearance of justice. So it's like a spiral.
But
it's
you
like the same,
you said
but it's
another
opposite.
thing, and here the same thing is happening in Israel is happening all around, also in Europe, in United States. It's that, and you also once we spoke about it, how, and this is really a kind of ethical regression. Things which were up till 10, 20 years ago, part of, let's call it this obscene, half-private, political unconscious. You talk this, but you cannot say it publicly. Now, more and more, you can say it publicly.
You wrote about it now in this movie you never saw, but you wrote so beautiful on it, Act of Killing. And it's exactly when there's no shame anymore. They describe, you have to see, it's one of the most amazing documentary ever. On
the guy was in
he was
here.
When the shame is not exist anymore, and then now what you do, I remember for so many years, we, the leftists in Israel, we tried to convince that there was Nakba, that we killed people in 48, and that we took Palestinian villages, and we did it in order that we can do tikkun, repair. And everyone said, you are self-hated Israeli leftists. And one day they just said, you're right. And though if they did it, what do you want for us? We also should do it. You know, in one day, instead to tell us that we are liars, they said, you're right, and that's how it should be. And then you're like, what you do with it? You come to Slovenia and make noise. You know.
Okay, I think we overstepped all time limits. I only started with the first question I had. with the question about the relation between law and grace. I had two more. Because I'm interested in theoretical question about the universality and the Jewish exception and the relation between these. But let me not start on this, because then there is
another film.
There's another film projection.
Which one?
Which is like an hour. Should have been an hour ago or something.
First one is The Man Who Saved Louvre.
I think this is the point where we should stop. It's a suspended ending, open-ended, no happy ending. I don't know.
I just tomorrow at 11. Your proposal tomorrow at 11.
Okay. Done.
Sorry, I have to run. Yes, actually, come on. Because I give to you and it is a long 6 hours. Okay, so look, you notice how nicely I am dressed. This was except
For the funeral.
something stupid funeral.
Once again, I have to run to pee and I come back.
Sorry? Yeah. Try to pee to the cold, you know. Sì, si vede, bomo takoj tudi.